This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan.
Driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
Well, thank you so much, Parker, and welcome to Time Signatures. I'm your host, Jim Ervin. You know, part of the fun that I have with this program is each and every time that I come together with you, I get a chance to not only meet established national musicians, but I also get to meet some new and newer blues musicians along the way, as well as a generous helping of established local famous musicians as well. Now, these are acts that are well known on a general locale, such as today's guest. This young man has been enamored with guitars since the age of 3. And he was picking riffs on his father's guitars back then. By the age of 10, he formed his own band, and it was off to the races. He has appeared on stage with the likes of Shemekia Copeland, Albert Cummings, King Solomon Hicks, and Davy Knowles, just to name a few. Encompassing a diverse range of musical tastes that include the blues, prog, and rock, our guest has drawn inspiration from Chris Kane, Gary Moore, and Robin Trower, just to name a few. But he refuses to be confined to just one specific genre. We're going to talk a lot about that. There is a ton to talk about. So let's welcome our guest, Ben Brandt. Welcome to Time Signatures. How are you, sir?
Hey, man. How are you? Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it.
It is a pleasure, sir. Always fun to talk to new folks. I'd love to talk to you about your earliest memories of music, as it seems you were quite young when you began playing around with music, yeah?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to grow up in a musical family per se.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a player. My mom wasn't. My father was. So I grew up around the guitar at a young age. I had a general interest in the thing. Really, pretty natural. I just gravitated to it. It wasn't a forced thing. And then it just developed into. I think that developed into a love of music. I don't know if it worked the other way around. I think that got me interested in different bands and players and stuff like that.
Sure.
But yeah, it started off at a really young age.
So you began picking on your father's guitar at the age of 3. How did your dad respond to that? I mean, was he kind of working with you on it, or how did that present itself?
I would imagine back then, probably, like maybe when I was 3, he probably did. It was also a combination of me learning things and then bringing it to him and kind of comparing what he thought he knew the song as and then the way that I had learned it. So yeah, my formative years were fun, especially with, like, you know, my dad being a professional player. I mean, he had the knowledge of. He was a writer. He was a player. He played live. He did studio work. So he had a lot of different angles, and he was definitely really informative in the stuff that he shared with me at a young age.
Very nice. Now, Fast forward to the age of 10, you formed your first band. Tell me about that band, would you please?
Well, I don't know that I formed the band. So it was a project that had my name on it. It was called the original Ben Brandt Project. The Ben Jamin Project was the technical name.
Okay.
And it was a bunch of session players around the Jersey, New York area. And it was sponsored by a Jersey station called WDHA, 105.5 WDHA.
Oh, wow.
And this is like the late 90s. So this is at a time where, like, radio stations would sponsor or kind of do like a label deal where they would put you in a studio and you would do a project with them, and they would, for maybe a season or a couple of seasons, have you do festivals and tour regionally for that kind of thing. So we were in a project like that, and it's kind of a long story, but it's a funny story how it ended up coming to fruition. But I ended up getting a deal with them when I was 10 to do, it was basically a full-length album. And then it was like I said, it wasn't really musicians that I formed it with. It was just kind of session guys that my dad put together.
Okay.
But it
Yeah.
was in support of that project with that radio station.
So you actually put out or they put out an album when you were 10 years old with that music?
Yeah. Yeah. It was on the
Wow.
radio. We did support for Billy Hector and Savoy Brown and Kim Simmons, and
Nice.
it's pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I imagine somebody has got copies of that laying around somewhere.
Corner. Yeah.
Well, listen, I love that your inspiration has come from such a wide variety of musicians, Ben. Robin Trower, Steve Vai, Alex Lifeson. Talk about that variety and how it lent itself to the development of yourself as a guitarist, would you?
Yeah. So I didn't really grow up listening to traditional blues or blues rock music. It was really that was kind of just part of the evolution of listening to music, really was kind of going down that avenue. My dad really listened to a lot of uh, what now you would call classic rock, or prog rock, like a lot of Yes, Genesis, Rush, Police, King Crimson, um, things like that, sort of.
Sure.
And there was a lot of like, The Who, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, uh, some kind of things that are more like in the classic rock
Yep.
kind of realm. Um, so I grew up listening to a real big mix of players. It was never really just like BB King and Clapton and those kinds of guys. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just didn't grow up listening to that stuff. I
Yeah.
grew up listening to players that were like Martin Barr, who is the guitarist in Jethro Tull, or Alex Lifeson, who's the guitarist in Rush. Um, those are the players that really developed my style early on. And then later on, when I'd say probably in my later teens, I then kind of got into more blues players through way
Okay.
of players like Jimmy Herring and Robin Ford and um, players like that. Derek Trucks also. I then started getting into more traditional players, be it BB King, uh, Albert, Freddie, and stuff like that. Although my
Sure.
dad was a Albert Collins fan, he really liked Albert Collins,
Okay.
so I had a lot of that when I was growing up, and
Yeah.
a fair amount of Stevie too, because I was that was popular in that era in the '90s. So
Oh, yeah. Yep. Well, how about the incredible who's who that you've shared the stage with? Shemekia, Albert, Coco Montoya, and
yeah,
Blackberry Smoke, which, I mean, I know that they lend themselves more to rock, but they definitely have some blues mixed in there as well. That's some mix, man.
yeah. So like I was saying, like there's a lot of crossover in the stuff that I'm doing. So
Hmm.
in there being some rock crossover, it lends itself to be able to support acts like Blackberry Smoke, or bands like the Record Company or Taz Niederauer, um, or Hannah Wicklund. There's the list goes on and on. So yeah, I've been really fortunate to share the stage with those kinds of people and open for those kinds of people. Also, a lot of these shows are support shows that were either co-bills or we were supporting them. Um, then through that, I was lucky enough to sit in with them, including Joe Bonamassa, who I did not open for, but I was lucky enough to sit in with him. Um,
Okay.
so there's I'm just fortunate enough to have those things happen. Really, I'm not really sure uh, why they happen, because I guess when you're consistent and you when you put consistent work into something, I guess those are the kinds of outcomes that happen. But
Sure.
yeah, I'm just really fortunate to share the stage with those kinds of players. I admire and am inspired by players like that. So I mean, it's a pretty cool thing. It's an honor to play with those kinds of people.
Well, you were talking about crossover, and there's a lot of that these days in the blues. Even Joe is unabashedly, not in the box. and even to the point where he likes to do some stuff that is flat out rock with Black Country Communion.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, man, Blackberry Smoke, one of my favorite groups that was introduced to me within the last probably 12 months. But those guys can really flat out get with it, and they do bring some blues to the stage, don't they?
Yeah, they have a I think I don't know if I would call them like blues rock. I would call them more southern rock. And I think southern rock has like a line that runs through it of blues. It's kind of rooted
Yeah.
in that kind of thing anyway.
Yep.
So I think that like they get they're a prime example of a crossover band that kind of fits the box of classic rock as well as southern rock.
Hmm.
And you might not even be aware of that if you're a fan of either one of those things, but they really do. There is lines that are across there for sure. I mean, they've been on things like the Blues Cruise, and they're also on like the Rock
Yes.
Cruise,
Yes.
stuff like that too. You know?
Yep. Another band that I've been exposed to that's they're making a name for themselves right now, the Cold Stairs.
Oh yeah, I have a show
Um,
with them in May actually.
oh man, they I Chris Tapp, I believe it
Yeah.
is the lead
Huh?
singer. Chris is working on a project. I don't know if you're aware of this, but he was actually in Europe when they had the Peter Green guitars for sale,
Mhm.
and he was there for the auction, and he ended up buying a National Resonator, I believe it was, from Peter's estate, and he is putting an album together called the Green Album. But I love the band. I mean, the Cold Stairs, I just absolutely love them. I'm hoping that they'll come through Michigan, so we'll get a chance to see them. But I wanted to ask you, as you were performing with these various musicians, Ben, following your own set, did you ever catch yourself standing off stage just kind of having a pinch me moment as you were watching them do their work?
Uh, yeah, it usually happens like earlier, like the earlier on, like getting the gig and then like processing the getting the thing
Sure.
is I'm like, oh wow, like that actually happened, you know. I've always had the approach of going after gigs that seem like they're out of reach or opportunities that are out of reach. This it's an equal amount of work to go after an opportunity that has lesser value in the end goal, you know. I mean, if you're a band and you want to tour, trying to book a support run with a national act, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's a strategic plan. Booking a bar tour, you might not be profitable, you know, and you probably won't play anybody. You might not sell merch. There's the same amount of work that goes into two of those things, from
Sure.
logistics to follow-ups, the emails, calling, the advertising, all that kind of stuff. It's just like a little bit, it seems like it's more out of reach going for things that are national. So I a lot of the opportunities that I've had are things that I thought were out of reach. And yeah, and then in getting them, they did seem like pinch me moments just because they come to fruition. But I mean, if you know the avenues to go down, I mean, you can make opportunities happen for sure. I mean, you don't have to always have to you don't really don't have to play like the bottom of the barrel venues anymore to be on the road, you know. You could there's lots of resources as an independent musician to find better venues and better gigs. So
Which I think is wonderful, especially for a lot of the independent musicians out there today. One of the things that I do when I prepare for an interview, Ben, is number one, I like to immerse myself in the music of the person that I'm going to be talking to.
sure.
And as I was preparing for your interview, I think my favorite video piece that I found was you and Davy Knowles jamming away, man. Looks like you guys were just having a blast. Talk about that opportunity that you had working with him.
Davy's one of my good friends, so shout out to Davy.
Really?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
one of my great friends. Um, we have a personal connection, and which so I'm very fortunate for that, which introduced the two of us. We've been long term friends, and I've played with him a number of times now. I've opened for him a number of times.
Wow.
Every time we're around each other, it's always a good time. We're constantly talking back and forth with each other about gear and just uh, little jokes that we have and stuff going on. So he's a he's a great guy. He's a great player and he's a great person too.
I actually have. Oh no, I don't. I took it down. Doggone it. I have autographed CD covers that I rotate on my wall, and I had a cover back here that was signed by Davy.
Oh,
I
cool.
also have one that's signed by he and his band. Is Backdoor Slam? Is that correct?
Yeah, Backdoor Slam was the band that he was in back in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
And now
yeah.
it's Davy Knowles and I forget the name of the band now. But Todd is the name of the bass player. Uh,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
forgot the drummer, but the drummer plays with lots of people. He was from LA for a number of years, but
Right.
they're great guys.
Now, big fan of Davies, and I just interviewed him probably within the last 2 weeks, I believe it was. So his
Oh,
episode's
really?
coming up as well. Yeah. Oh, great guy.
Pretty cool.
Great guy. And I was actually very fortunate to be able to get an interview with him. But Ben, you have accumulated more than 2 decades of live performance, and you were recently honored as the best blues rock artist at the Central Pennsylvania Music Awards. Now, this is an award that reflects both your lifelong dedication to your craft and your lasting impact on the region's music scene. Now, how big of a deal was this award to you? And talk about it for a bit, would you please?
Yeah. So just to put in perspective the central Pennsylvania area, because the it's easy to look at this award and see like, oh, it's just a little thing they hand out to the players in the area. This is like a 2,500 cap room or 3,500 cap room theater that they rent out like the Grammys basically.
Wow.
Tickets to it, they sell it out. The music scene is very big in the Pennsylvania area. It runs from the Gettysburg area all the way through central, south central, Lancaster
Hmm.
area, which is a very big area. There's bands like um Hailstorm is from central Pennsylvania.
Really? Okay. All right.
Poison is from central Pennsylvania. Taylor
Okay.
Swift is from there. There's bands like Breaking Benjamin is from there. My Morning Jacket, Mount Joy is also from the area. There's a number of bands that are in the jam scene. So there's a strong music scene there. Uh, I'm not originally from the Harrisburg area. I moved there when I was about 20 years old. Um,
Okay.
after some things in life changed, so I moved there when I was 20, and right away my plan for moving there was not music. It was a different opportunity. Um, but there's such a huge scene there. There's different nonprofits and different organizations. There's a blues society there. There's a bluegrass society. There's rock one. There's a jazz organization. There's all these different things. So it's a quite an honor to be mentioned in these awards they have there. There's a lot of bands that get mentioned. I think in my category, I was nominated 5 or 6 times this year for different things.
Wow.
In the blues rock category alone, I think there was like 11 or 12 different bands I was against. Um, and these bands range from, you know, bands that are just starting to bands that have
Sure.
30,000 followers that are really big in the area that have been there for a long time. Um, so to be nominated, but to also win this year specifically was a really big deal. I've been nominated each year since 2019, and Soul Miners Union did win in 20. I think it was 2022. It might have been 22 or 23.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really cool to win it under my own name. I mean, it's just an honor because it really it especially for having left the area. I'm living in Nashville now. It kind of like bookended that era of living in that area, and all the work that I put in there, the making the album that's coming out currently, the last EP that I did, moving to Nashville, playing with Joe out there, the constant gigs that I had out there. So it's quite an honor. Pretty cool.
Indeed. And speaking of your new album you've got coming out, tell us a little bit about that. When is it going to be out? Where is it going to be available? Um, you know, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so the album was recorded in Nashville. It's fully original with the exception of one song on it. So it's about a 9-track album, and there's
Okay.
one extra track that's kind of an interlude that's kind of split throughout the album, sort of like an old school approach to like the 70s
Yeah.
record.
Yeah.
Um, so it was recorded in Nashville in November, I believe, with JD Simo actually produced it.
Okay.
Uh, and it is I would consider it a rock album. Um, and it should be out. I'm hoping that the first singles start coming out right around May or June. There's been a couple of delays with distribution, but we're starting to get those things figured out. And I would say the first singles should be out right around the early summer, and then they'll be out across all streaming platforms and everything.
Wonderful.
For
Now,
that,
Ben, for those watching who might want to learn more about you and your story, maybe buy some CDs or some merch, or even book you for a gig, where can we send them?
you can go to my website. My website is benjbrandt.com, and that's the same handle across all my social media. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all of that stuff. Or you can shoot me a message at my email, which is also listed in my website. So any of those places are great. And then as far as merch, we're currently revamping the merch store. So that'll be relisted pretty soon with some items available, but they'll be available at shows sooner than they will be at the store though.
Okay, that's good to know. So if you don't get a chance to see it on the store, you can always go out to a show and get it right there, and they'll take care of you personally.
That's right.
Um, Ben Brandt, it has been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for your time today, and I appreciate you coming on Time Signatures.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And as this episode comes to a close, I want to tell you about the Killer Blues Headstone Project. Stephen Salter started Killer Blues in 2008 with the goal of making sure that no blues musician lay in an unmarked grave. To date, Killer Blues Headstone Project has placed over 170 headstones in 16 states. There's a lot more work to do. In fact, Stephen already has a list of around 25 more headstones in need of funding and placement, and he needs your help to have the funds to do it. Whether it's $5, $50, $500 or more, every dollar raised goes to this worthwhile project. They are a 501c3. Please consider making a tax-deductible donation today at killerblues.net and look for a donation link at the bottom of the page. And as always, thank you so much for your consideration. And that wraps up this edition of Time Signatures. Once again, my thanks to our guest, Ben Brandt, but also to you, for without you, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you, keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues, one story at a time, is my mission. Until next time, so long, everybody.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
You know I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.